Welcome. My name is Martin the coach, and this is the 7 levels of intimacy by Matthew Kelly. I'm going to be doing the reading of this book, and I'll stop in some instances just to react or respond to the inspiration in this book. I love the topic of intimacy because it is something I've learned progressively in my life, in my marriage, in my relationships, and I can for sure reveal that when your understanding about intimacy changes and it changes correctly, you see the difference in the quality of relationships you start having. You will notice a change in the way you communicate in your marriage if you're married. You also notice this also impacting your relationship with your children, your relationship with your friends. And basically, relationships are to be meaningful. And for there to be a meaning in any relationship, then there has to be a connection between the parties in that relationship that permits them to be their true selves. And that's really the subject about intimacy. But those are my own thoughts. Let's get into the book. I'll read through the chapters. We're going to start with chapter 1. And the title of this chapter is The Sex Myth. But then there's the main topic, which is sex is not intimacy. So there's a myth around sex, which has to do with sex being synonymous with intimacy. But as we will see in this book, those are two different things. So I start reading the book. Sex is not intimacy. It can be a part of intimacy, no question, but sex doesn't equal intimacy. It doesn't come with a guarantee of intimacy. Sex isn't absolutely necessary for intimacy. And yet, almost every reference to intimacy in modern popular culture is a reference to sex. If we are ever to truly experience intimacy, we must first move beyond the pubescent notion that sex and intimacy are synonymous. Intimacy is the one thing that a person cannot live happily without. Think about it. Who are the happiest people you know? The people who are truly thriving. Do they just have sex or do they have intimacy? They have intimacy, don't they? They might have sex too, but the foundation of their lives is an authentic experience of intimacy. They have people they can share their lives with. They have a genuine interest in the people around them. They have great relationships. We can live happily without new cars and designer clothes. We can live and thrive without our dream homes. We can live without vacationing in all the right places, but we cannot live happily without intimacy. Intimacy is one of our legitimate needs and a requisite for happiness. You can survive without intimacy, but you cannot thrive without it. Human beings yearn above all else for intimacy. We desire happiness, and sometimes we confuse this desire for happiness with a desire for pleasure and possessions. But once we have experienced the pleasure or attained the possessions, we are still left wanting. Wanting what? Intimacy. Our desire for happiness is ultimately a desire for intimacy. If we have intimacy, we can go without an awful lot and still be happy. Without intimacy, all the riches of the world cannot satisfy our hungry hearts. Until we experience intimacy, our hearts remain restless, irritable, and discontented. What is intimacy? Life is a self revelation. It's about revealing yourself. Every day, in 1,000 ways, we reveal ourselves to the people around us and to the world. Everything we say and do reveals something about who we are. Even the things we don't say and the things we don't tell others something about us. Life is about sharing ourselves with humanity at this moment in history. Relationships are also a process of self revelation, but far too often we spend our time and energy hiding our true selves from each other in relationships. This is where we encounter the great paradox that surrounds our struggle for intimacy. The entire human experience is a quest for harmony amid opposing forces, and a quest for intimacy is no different. We yearn for intimacy, but we avoid it. We want it badly, but we run from it. At some deep level, we sense that we have a profound need for intimacy, but we are also afraid to go there. Why? We avoid intimacy because having intimacy means exposing our secrets. Being intimate means sharing the secrets of our hearts, minds, and souls with another fragile and imperfect human being. Intimacy requires that we allow another person to discover what moves us, what inspires us, what drives us, what eats us, what we are running toward, what we are running from, what silent, self destructive enemies lie within us, and what wild and wonderful dreams we hold in our hearts. To be truly intimate with another person is to share every aspect of yourself with that person. We have to be willing to take off our masks and lay down our guard, to set aside our pretenses, and to share what is shaping us and directing our lives. This is the greatest gift we can give to another human being, to allow him or her to simply see us for who we are, with our strengths and weaknesses, faults, failings, flaws, defects, talents, abilities, achievements, and potential. Intimacy requires that we allow another person into our heart, mind, body, and soul. In its purest form, it is a complete and unrestrained sharing of self. Not all relationships are worthy of such a complete intimacy, but our primary relationship should be. What is intimacy? It is the process of mutual self revelation that inspires us to give ourselves completely to another person in the mystery we call love. So, the word that is standing out here is it is a process. So, it is not a one time event, it is not an instantaneous experience. It is something you intentionally get into and involve yourself in it because of its benefits. So if it's a relationship that you care, a primary relationship for that matter, then you have to look for means and ways to be more intimate with your friend, with your spouse, with your child, because the more the intimacy is growing, the more interactions, deep interactions, meaningful interactions are possible. So, what is your story? What's your story? That's another subtopic. You have deep need to be known. Within each of us, there's a story that wants to be told. Intimacy means sharing our story. Sharing our story helps us to remember who we are, where we have come from, and what matters most. Sharing our story keeps us sane. Visit any mental institution and you will discover that most of the patients have forgotten their own story. Before I forget, let me change the screen a little bit because I want to give you a variety so that you don't get bored just looking at one screen. So at the background is the book that I'm reading or we are reading together. Is the 7 Levels of Intimacy by Matthew Kelly. And You can get this book on Amazon, and you will get it through the link I'm going to share in this video. I'm an affiliate of Amazon.com. So what happens is, if you're going to buy this book through this link I'm going to share, I'll get a commission, but at no extra shilling or dollar on the price. It is just that I'm helping Amazon to sell or to market their products by sharing it with my audience, but it doesn't affect the price. Okay, so let's continue. They simply cannot. So visit any mental institution and you'll discover that most of the patients have forgotten their own story. They simply cannot put their yesterdays or their lives into any cohesive or structured memory. As a result, they lose sight of the reference point that the past provides us in mapping our future. When we forget our story, we lose the thread of our lives and we go mad. To varying degrees, we all forget our own stories, and to the extent that we do so, we all go a little mad. Great relationships helps us to remember our stories, who we are and where we have come from, and in some strange and mystical way, by remembering our stories, we celebrate ourselves in a very healthy way. What's your story? What's your family story? What's the story of your relationship? It fascinates me that if you ask a couple at their rehearsal dinner to tell their story, how and when they met, when and where the proposal took place, and so on, there's a passion and enthusiasm in the telling of the story. But as the years pass, the reply to the question, how did you meet, becomes a three-word answer. In the library, on a plane, at a bar. This is a classic example of how over time we forget our story or become immune to its power. Only by sharing our story with another will we ever feel uniquely known. Otherwise, and I assure you it happens every day, we can pass through this life and on to the next without anyone ever really knowing us. Imagine that. Imagine living your whole life and never being really known by anybody. We also have a great need to share the story of our relationships. Just as a person who forgets his story goes insane, so does a couple who forget their story. They don't go asylum mad, but both participants in the relationship start to do crazy things that ultimately can lead to the breakdown of the relationship. Unless they can rediscover the thread of their relationship, unless they can remember and cherish their story together again, the breakdown of their relationship inevitably leads to a breakup or a life of quiet desperation, with it a relationship that has gone mad. So that should be our first portion. We'll continue with chapter 1 in the subsequent videos, but I'll stop at this and just capture some very important thoughts. So you have a story, I have a story. And intimacy is an opportunity to share your story with the person you are in a relationship with. If it's your spouse, it is even better. It is an opportunity to open your heart, to invite them into your heart, into your body, into your soul, into your personal space. It is being vulnerable with them. And you can look at it, it's an opportunity to tell your story. You have a story. So intimacy is just revealing or telling your story. Don't forget, relationships are about self-revelation. So I want to ask you this question. You're in marriage right now. For the number of years you've been in marriage, personally, I've been in marriage for 14 years. What is your story? What is your version of intimacy in your marriage? Would you say your marriage has been held together by intimacy? From the the much or the little I've read through this book. Personally, I would say I'm better off because I intentionally began to learn about intimacy, and that's when I actually learned that life is about self-revelation, self-presentation, and self-expression. So at any given moment, I'm so keen, I want to be so in touch with my feelings, my thoughts, my fears, my worries, so that as I engage with people close to me, I don't hide anything. I want to bring them into that deep space and tell it to them. It is up to them how they will take it. Some will treat it with the confidence, with the honor, the respect it deserves. Some will just spill it out. I don't really mind. For me, by being true to myself, that's all that matters. So share your thoughts below about intimacy, about your marriage. But I believe this book is going to really help you and help me to refire, rebrand, rejuvenate, and have our marriage's intimacy rebooted to a process of growth and advancement. Until then, my name is Martin, the coach. It was a pleasure having you watch and listen. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment, and then share this video with other friends of yours because we all need to learn about intimacy.